In your opinion, how, and if you want to demonstrate it and you want to showcase it, how does the mouthpiece selection and tonguing technique of the trumpet influence the mariachi trumpet timbre?
Well, the mouthpiece selection is, I honestly don't like to mess with anybody's mouthpiece selection because that's so personal to trumpet players. I've seen some teachers grab a student's mouthpiece and say, this isn't any good, you gotta change it, here, use a new mouthpiece. And they mess them up like for about 5 years or something like that. I've seen some horrible things. I think that the combination of your mouthpiece and the trumpet is very, very important. I remember when I was trying to get a new trumpet, this one's about 16 years old, and this mouthpiece was going in really, really deep into the horn, so it was hard for me to tune whenever it got really cold outside or hot. So Bob Reeves built a little sort of extension or something here. And as soon as he fixed that, I felt very, very comfortable. The resistances, everything about the horn felt really good. It does affect the timbre. You know, some people like the darker sound, so they go with more of a shallow mouthpiece or the trumpet made of brass or copper or whatever like that. I like more, for mariachi, I like more of a sound that's going to cut through, a little brighter. The tonguing technique, that is totally different from what you're taught in classical trumpet playing. For instance, the quarter notes or the eighth notes in classical is usually ta, 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 where the tongue stays down after you attack the note. Basically like this. That kind of thing. In mariachi, no. In mariachi is... Bueno, Hayden era mexicano. But it's a huge difference. And in mariachi, the staccato, you attack the back of the teeth, and then you pull back, and then you stop the note again in the back of the teeth. So it's like tap, T-A-T, tap. So it's really short. It's single, right? And now in classical, it's a totally different way of playing. So what I try to explain to trumpet students is that if you play in the orchestra and you also play the mariachi, make sure you don't crisscross those things, because you will get your orchestra director very upset. You understand what I mean? So I think if you learn how to shift gears, it's only going to make you a better musician. Bottom line, if you're able to do whatever director asks for you to do musically, everybody's going to want to hire you. Why? Because you're very, very versatile. Playing classical, playing jazz, and playing mariachi. It's awesome to be able to express yourself in all those different genres. But yeah, the tonguing has a lot to do with those styles.
Would you say, Maestro, that it would be a more workable transition to be classically trained and go to mariachi technique? Or in your experiences, would a mariachi that started out playing, a trumpet that played mariachi, would it be more easier for him to go to classical? Or what is your experience?
Well, you need the backbone, which is obviously you need theory, you need to know your scales, you need to know all that. But once you start on the road of classical mariachi trumpet, trumpet playing, it's very hard to transition into mariachi. Because you develop that habit of going ta 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 ta. And when somebody asks you to go ta 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 after, it's very difficult. But if you start off playing ta 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 ta, like my 11-year-old son Christian, I'm teaching them once in a while, right? Coscorrones y todo, right? But, so I'm teaching them to play ta 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 ta. Once I transition him to an orchestra, and I want him to be in a youth orchestra, playing ta 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 is going to be very simple for him. So it's a lot easier to transition from mariachi to the orchestra, classical orchestra style, and to jazz. The vice versa is really different, very difficult to do.
Wow. Any questions that you may want to have pertaining to this particular question? Trumpet players. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Oh, no. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
What's a good technique for mariachi vibrato?
El vibrato, originally the top trumpet players never really thought about, oh, here's an exercise for vibrato. How they approached it is trying to make the trumpet sing, right? So it's like you hear a singer that has a horrible vibrato or a singer that has a real pretty vibrato. Right? You're going to play the trumpet, you're not going to play. All the recordings where they had no clue. There's the churpias vibrando cada nota, no? And after, you have Miguel Martinez coming along, in the late 40s, and where it's more of a singing style. He didn't really attack. He didn't really put vibrato on every note. So it really came naturally. I think the speed of the song would sort of dictate to them how they were going to do the vibrato, interpret that song. And it all came from here. Now, so many people want to learn, so many trumpet players want to learn technically how to do it. So what we do, well, I think a good exercise is be able to hit the note on a G. Make sure you don't start flat, because it doesn't sound good to the ear. It doesn't sound pleasant. Watch. You hear that? Mm-hmm. Sounds horrible. If you hear somebody sing like that, it's not going to sound pleasant to the ear. But if you... Es como una vibración normal. Muy cantable, ¿no? You could even transition to a very classical sound. Or but to be able to control it all, that's sort of the secret. But if you can keep away from starting the vibrato under that line of the pitch, it's really good. It's really good. I think practicing it at different speeds is good. 8 notes and then maybe triplets. It works. I mean, I've seen it work for some trumpet players.
Very good question. Mm-hmm. Very good question.
And that's, for me, it's el vibrato and the staccato. What really puts it in a nutshell for mariachi, the mariachi style, is the vibrato and the staccato.
I know you have your vibrato. You have, because yours is very distinguished from other trumpet players. Do you have a name for it? I mean,
No. It's just it's the way I feel when I play. Sometimes it'll come out faster because I feel that what I'm playing at that moment. I'm always learning. I think it was about 6 years ago. I was with Cipriano doing a clinic, with Cipriano Silva, and we were playing together. I think Azul Cielo, then we were playing El Becerro, and then we played El Peine de Oro, right? And he tells me, you know what? When you hit that last note, feel that you're going to vibrato real slow, but it's not going to come out slow. It's going to sound great. So when we would do that part where and once I heard it back, we recorded it, and it sounded really, really nice. trying to, because I was doing it. He goes, try to slow it down. And it makes a difference. So he gave me just another option. So that's what we try to do. You know, we're learning and taking in as much as we can, and we will record ourselves. You'll record it, and you see the difference. And then you decide, well, how do I want to play this? And you have all these options.
We have another question over here.
Maestro, regarding trumpet technique, like say for mariachi directors, that's what they do. They get students at the beginning level. What do you think about the importance of while they're learning the fundamentals, while they're learning the basics, the elements of style also? Are those incorporated as soon as they start working on the trumpet, as far as styles of mariachi?
Yeah, the beginning trumpet books, I've seen a lot of them that are pretty good. I actually started my son on one of those books. You know, where they do the long tones. What those books don't have is the explanation of a staccato. And you have to start your trumpet players off to play, to hear it. Say, tat, 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 tat. Once you're able to do that in the beginning, the rest is going to be a lot easier. Because they're going to have that, which is the essence of mariachi trumpet playing, that short stuff. But the rest of the stuff comes by itself, right? When you're the scales, holding a long tone so they could build up their embouchure a little bit. And that's how I started my son. Actually, he didn't pick up the trumpet until I think I taught him like 3 months of solfege, you know, with a fixed do. So by 3 months into it, he started playing. He already knew the notes. I say do, re, sostenidos.
So it was the fixed do.
Fixed do.
Mm-hmm.
Do is do, and the tono de fa,
That's fine.
fa.
You
That's right.
You know.
How do you teach buzzing for like a very, very beginner before they start playing?
I
Or do
just
you
say-
just tell them?
I just say buzz. You know, make that noise.
Do it.
Because nobody's ever taught me to buzz, to be honest with you. Because you just hear somebody, I learned by hearing my brothers play. You know, I go, wow, that sounds nice, so I try to emulate it. I think with my band teacher, actually, when I was 10, it's, you know, this creates sound. That's the sound, you know, the sound gets a little airy and dirty, you know, you work more on the buzz and pedal tones to clean it up, right? But once they know the mechanics of what creates sound and how to adjust the back of the tongue to direct the air where it's supposed to go, it should be effortless, you know. There's a lot of teachers that, oh, you know, you got to run 10 miles and develop the lungs and do 100 push-ups a day.
Who wants to do that?
That's my brother Chencho. Chencho's like that. I go, what are you telling them that for? You know, that's horrible. I wouldn't study with you. But the trumpet should be effortless. I mean, no breath, you know. So if you don't have the air control, it's gonna go away right away. You have to take another breath.
Yeah.
But if you have that control, you're able to play soft and you move up and down in the horn. So that helps. All that helps is your expression too. When you're playing a bolero and you're gonna play an A, a concert G, and you want to play it soft and then do your crescendo and then the vibrato and any speed that you feel, it's only gonna make you sound better and the group better. You know?
Well, excellent questions, and we're going to go on to the second one now, Maestro, but very quickly, these are questions that were surveyed by the interim president of TAME right now, Mr. David Silva. You can raise your hand, sir. David Silva. And they're actually, you know, from members of, that are members in TAME, the Texas Association of Mariachi Educators. Question number 2, and there are really great questions. Maestro, how do you musically arrange for a student novice, beginner mariachi ensemble versus a professional mariachi ensemble? How far can you go? How difficult can you make the arrangement? If we play one of your arrangements, can we modify it? Do you have no, this is the way you've got to play it. No, this is the, so how would you make a distinction?
Yeah, it's really difficult to come up with something that, like one size fits all. It's really difficult because every group has, different singers and the whole thing. What I do with Mariachi Reina, for instance, with the girls, I write maybe at about 75% or 25% less difficulty than what I write for solo, right? So I camouflage the arrangements to sound sort of spectacular sometimes, but they're not difficult to play. They're very accessible. When I write for solecitos with the kids group, it's another 60%, down there. But with them, I think I started with Médico Mérez Astuna, I think, or De Colores, something like that. And everything's just in first position. I mean, first position, and the first trumpet doesn't go above a C. Maybe a concert C, which is our D. And what I try to do, I try to make sure that right from the beginning, that they're not playing everything unison. That they get a feel for them doing an adorno and the violins doing an adorno. Even if it's in unison, I'll do that. And I always consider, their capacity, how they're playing. Right now, obviously, what I write for Solecitos is a little bit more challenging. I remember we did Sonora, Sus Ojos Negros. Now, my son couldn't handle that. He would go. Now he's able to at that speed, and now also Jose, the first trumpet player. You just have to see what you have, with the kids. I mean, if I were to send an arrangement that's at that level, I think everybody would have to maybe do an adjustment. It would be my job as an arranger to put bowings that are very much in the style, because if you don't put bowings in an arrangement of mariachi, you could go directly to a whole other style of bowing. Yeah, those bowings are very, very important. That's what also distinguishes the mariachi style. And it's pretty much the opposite of what classical is.
So when you bow classically, it would be the opposite. There's a lot of up-bowing that is predominant in the mariachi style.
And like, for instance, when we play short notes, the violins are playing connected notes. We encourage them to connect it. And it's that combination of the short notes with the trumpet, with the connection of the violins, that gives you that mariachi sound. But, and what I try to do, I always try to find the intervals that are comfortable for them to play in the violins, and that are comfortable for the trumpets to play. And if they could harmonize, you get them to play in a comfortable range, and they're in harmony with the violins, it's even much better. Even though they're playing very simple arrangements, it sounds more musical. So how you voice mariachi arrangements make a huge difference. You can play las mañanitas, and if you don't voice it correctly, it's a huge difference. I mean, it's like a 40% difference.
Do you adapt vocally also to the children?
Oh yeah, definitely. The arrangements are made for them in their key. Yeah, I don't and obviously, for mariachi, if their key is E flat, you're going to play E flat. Okay, kids play E flat, A flat, no. Okay, vamos a bajarla a re. A re. O a mi mayor, re todavía, porque mi para las trompetas está medio complicado al principio. But see, those are the choices that you guys make. And it's very important for you guys to know your way around that. And if you're not really that sure, call. Call somebody that you think knows.
I think it comes down to, as directors, it's your style. It's what do you want to do? I know that a lot of directors want the phrasing exactly the same way as the violins are doing, exactly the way the trumpets are doing. You cut it off and you extend it. And what Maestro Jose is saying, a lot of times the contrast is what gives it more of a mariachi style. The trumpets are short, the violins are a little bit more legato. A little bit more
Like this, you're never going to hear this in Mexico when you play La Son de la Negra, and I hear it a lot here in the States. Really good. The trumpet's slurring. And I think that either they have a director that sort of, the violins, they want to make the trumpet slur, and it's not like orchestra. The trumpets are, and the violins are slurring, and it's a combination of those two things that give you the flavor of the song. It could really drive you crazy. It could really drive you crazy. I mean, our album that will be out in April, it's all symphonic. Before I started writing that stuff, orchestrating it, I mean, I know how to orchestrate, and I know instrumentation and stuff like that, the instruments. But, you got to know texture, too. You got to know how they come together. You got to know, what's comfortable for an instrument. Can an oboe do a run like a flute and two clarinets? It's better for flutes and clarinets to do a run than including an oboe for that. You understand? Like certain things like that. The positioning of the tuba, in the trombone, there's certain positions that won't do that gliss or the slides and stuff. You gotta know all that stuff. So for 2 years, the past 2 years, all I've been doing is listening to classical music. And it's been the best school of my life. Listening and analyzing, getting scores and analyzing, Rimsky-Korsakov, and Mahler and these guys, and see what, highlighting certain things and dissecting, what are these guys thinking, just harmonically. And you just have to do that. Especially if you love music and you love a certain style, you have to really put yourself really deep into that style to try to be able to get a final product like that. My view for my record was, I want my mariachi to sound like they're playing with a London Symphony Orchestra. That's the sound I want for mariachi and symphony. So I'm listening to a lot of albums, really nice recordings, and that I really like.
Any questions? Yes.
If you were starting a program and it had to be after school at first because there's no class yet, what's the core instrumentation you would shoot for starting with, in order for the kids not to be distracted by having everyone there all at once starting from scratch? Is there a core instrumentation that would
if it's just one class, this one class is really difficult. I mean, I think I would separate maybe the melodies from the rhythm section.
Okay. I'm the orchestra teacher, so I have direct input into the strings, but I don't have everyone else, so I'm going to have to do it after school. So I'm trying to figure out how to build that core first.
Yeah, I think having more like a sectional with the rhythm section and just having them feel like maybe a 2/4 rhythm, boom, chum, boom, chum,
and then put it together later.
and then a 3/4, chum, 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 just getting their feet wet on that a little bit.
The guitarrón, the vihuela.
The guitarrón, vihuela, and guitar.
Okay.
And then the violins and the trumpet.
Then the violins and the trumpets.
Okay. All right. And then just add,
and just,
as they master
yeah.
whatever.
And then once you feel that they understand a little bit of what they're going to play as far as notes, then you get them together. And once they hear themselves together, then you got them hooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you got them hooked. And once they feel that,
Okay.
yeah, it's magic.
So you don't recommend starting as a full runaway?
It's really difficult. When I started Solecitos, I decided to start them out old school mariachi. I mean, I don't teach them like the way my foundation teaches the kids, which is sort of too cool. But with the foundation, we have a curriculum, and we have to teach a certain way, and I have to respect that. But with the Solecitos, I teach them old school. A ver, vengan para acá, siéntense, blah, 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 and I'll write something on the chalkboard, lines.
Is there videos on YouTube that the association has put together maybe for the people?
No, we haven't. We're going to work on something like that. That could probably help. But some exercises where they're actually doing scales and feeling a little bit more confident about singing, because they have to. First of all, it's going to help them with their singing, and then it's also going to help them know the notes of their instruments, right? See.
What's the age group you're talking about?
Solecitos are between 8 and 13.
And you begin, when they begin, you begin them on each instrument? Do you have a method book that you use, or how do you get them?
To be honest with you, I started off like, they know a little bit because their parents had taught them just a little bit basic chords, you know. But, you know, most of those kids have parents that were musicians.
But Mr. Hernandez plays all the instruments. También.
But
You know, so-
I'm saying as beginner students, like in our schools, we have big groups of kids that are there, but we don't have a method book.
Yeah, you could talk to.
Oh, there
the-
is one available.
Yeah, you could.
The
Marshall's
Simplemente
got something.
Mariachi.
Yeah, we have some, but I'm saying, you know, in general, with all the different instruments itself, how do you do it when you have these little kids playing that kind of technique? How long does it take you to teach an 8-year-old to do that?
It really doesn't take, well, first of all, because those kids already have sort of the music in their blood, they pick up really quick.
It's like
And-
Suzuki almost, you know,
and-
because they hear it all.
Yeah, and it's a Suzuki kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when they're singing it, so if I go, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do, they're doing that. And they're doing it all in unison, and then I'm changing it up on it. Do, si, la, sol, fa, mi, re, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do. They're actually reading the notes. They're reading the notes in 4/4. They're reading, and they're beginning to know their intervals. So they don't have them, do, re, mi, fa, sol, re, mi, and they're beginning to harmonize and get a feel for it. Then they'll compete against each other, just doing solfege. But they'll do like about, I think I did about maybe 3 weeks, almost a month of just that. Getting them to know the notes.
How many in that group?
And there are, I think there are 8 or 9 kids. 8 or 9 kids. It's just one little mariachi group.
Okay, back there, the question.
How do you teach the grace notes or the apoyaturas, whatever?
For the trumpet,
Yeah, for the trumpet, do you teach them, is it a half a step or is it a full step?
traditionally it's a half step.
Okay.
And the violins usually do the whole, they're tonic to the scale source, you know, to the key center. They don't go da 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 da. Sometimes they'll do. Very rarely will you say da 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 da, depending on the position. If it's really uncomfortable, they won't do it. Like sometimes they'll play a B flat with a B natural. You know, come on, you play A natural, no, B natural. You're not gonna do this kind of thing. It doesn't make sense. And mariachi, I mean, it happens so fast, and it's like a passing note, right? So Miguel Martinez always did half steps. When mariachi started writing and arranging and knowing a little bit more about theory, they started saying, well, what are we doing here? That's a mistake. They're doing a whole step and we're doing a half step. We got to fix it.
Yep, right.
So what do? Well, they're not going to change the violin to do a half step because it's very uncomfortable. So now they have the trumpet doing the whole step. And it doesn't, to me, it doesn't sound that good. Miguel la grabó con re sostenido.
Very good. I think there's a question around here somewhere. Yes, sir.
So when you have songs for the solecitos to sing, you might, what keys do you have them in, and how do you make adjustments for the armonía? You know, because some of the keys might not be that easy to play. Or
Well, the song selection has a lot to do with it, right? So if they sing Amor Eterno in Do, you know, it's a no-brainer right there, right? It's the arrangement's pretty simple. You know, I wrote little adornos for them to be able to handle the trumpets in unison. Sometimes they'll go into 2/3. And they don't even count off. They take a breath and I tell them, you know what, you're in front. El bajón es así. You know, el bajón. Who's ever going to be in the front? If it's a group thing, you know, the first violin does el bajón, and when Julio goes like this, the trumpet breathes. When he lifts, you breathe. And I tell my son, when Jose breathes, you breathe together. Because if you don't breathe the same time he does, it won't work. But I don't have to tell them 2 times. You know, they're used to that now. They don't have to be counting out. For me, 1, 2, do that kind of stuff. That's not mariachi, you know. There's something really special about mariachi donde they go, órale, pass, and it's really tight. You know, that's part of our, you know, of our tradition in those mariachi musicians too.
And just to make a distinction, coming from classical music, see, we always want to, 1, 2, 3, boom, you know.
Yeah.
We always want to do that, but that's up to the directors, for you all to get your ensembles to think in the terms of performing. This is what you're going to do. This is the count off. Whoever's going to bring in the count off, is el bajón, or is it going to be the trumpet? It's going to be whoever's in front is the one that's going to be doing that, you know. And it'll take a while for the students to adapt to that, you know.
I think if they know both ways, it's great. I think it's better for them both ways.
So it sounds like you handle that kind of stuff like a quartet or a chamber ensemble, where
Right.
they're all watching each other,
Mhm.
they don't need a director.
Well, I remember, and I don't know what experiences Maestro uses, but Mariachi Vargas is the 3rd generation. They said when they would rehearse, and this was the day when Jesus Rodriguez de Ijar was the director, they got to a point where they rehearsed one song for hours. When they felt pretty good, they'd turn off all the lights, and they just guided themselves with the breath of whoever was the director. And that was it. They knew that the songs were going to start. So that's the chamber influence. The chamber music is just what you do.
Yeah, they were very treacherous about practicing. I mean, I got to see it when I was like 11. I just remember they were el son de la negra, you know. Estaba Cipriano y Chencho de trompetas. I think my brother Pedro was also playing guitar. And I remember they were going over el son de la negra, and still Jesus told them, you know what, let's wait for Silvestre. There's something missing here. Could you believe that? I mean, this is something that they play all the time. Let's wait for Silvestre. You know, wait for Silvestre, and he goes over. Then they were doing Pasajero. You know, there's like a slur missing, and I know Silvestre. Yeah, I mean, so the respect that they have for him, you know. Yeah, it's
So you develop your little techniques as teachers and instructors. That's, you know how far, how slow, how quick, how intricate, how simple you have to do that, you know. So you develop your groups, and a lot's to be said about people that start the training in elementary and junior high school, and then to get them to the next level at the high school and the collegiate level. Well, a lot is to be said about the people that do the beginning instruction. If they've learned how to solfege, my God, that's part of it.
I think when you teach them to follow each other that way they become more sensitive to each other when they're playing. For me.
And to continue moving like that throughout the piece. So that
Yeah, they're always like, they're in contact. It's funny, but when I see the kids, I'm like a nervous dad, you know, off the stage. But it's funny how they, you know, just a little look, they have that contact now. See.
I just wanted to ask you, because a lot of times there's a lot of debate between the written word and obviously the oral tradition. And so for those people that are teaching mariachi in school, how soon and how important is it to be incorporating rote learning in the instruction? You know, I mean, like, it sounds to me like with Solecitos, you're doing it from the very beginning. You said you're doing old school. And of course, being at the Mariachi Heritage Society, you have a curriculum, you've got, you know, sponsors, you've got other considerations, obviously, that you have to take. But I'm sure that even there's got to be some, if it's all about preserving the mariachi tradition, I would imagine.
Yeah, once they're able to actually play fairly good, we start incorporating. Yeah, you know why? Because I've seen it too many times when they just learn by the book.
Yeah.
When I know I've had some of those guys in my group. And I mean, they've been there sometimes they've been there for a year and a half, and they learned 5 songs. That was a lot. We were like, oh my God, you know, where did this guy come from? You know, this guy can't memorize. And in mariachi is memorizar, órale, you know.
And did you learn that way? Did you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I didn't see a true mariachi arrangement till I was, a written arrangement till I was maybe 17. And that's because we used to go record with Manuel Acuña, a lot of stuff for Lalo Guerrero. So, you know, we would do stuff with Las Ardillitas con mariachi, me Antonio, and Acuña would write the arrangement. So he'd take me Antonio, we're the only ones that really read well. Estamos leyendo, that's when I started seeing like mariachi, pretty much mariachi. But mariachi arrangements of traditional songs, I didn't start seeing those till, wow, maybe the late 70s. early 80s. No, not even that.
Well, you
No,
talk a
because
little bit about
a los
mariachi
camperos, I used to
improvisation.
teach them without music. I mean, I used to rehearse them without music.
Sorry. You talk a little bit about mariachi and improvisation. Like, you think you improvise on it, just like a jazz musician.
There was improvisation by Miguel Martinez, el floreo de la trompeta, no? That he used a lot because Ruben really didn't do a full arrangement. He would do an intro, and maybe la música del medio that would repeat, probably like the intro. Maybe he'd do one adorno or something like that. But he would just say, compadre, take over. He would tell Miguel, and Miguel, he'd never shut up with the trumpet. He would tell me, no, me agarraba vianda, no, nadie me paraba. But Miguel became, 50% of the Varga sound, No sé si han oído la cárcel de Cananea con el charro Vitia. He was like doing an Arden thing, But el floreo, the improvisation, ranchero style, that Miguel sort of got from Jesus Salazar. But Miguel perfected it because if he'd go off a little bit and Ruben would hear something, they would say, oh, you gotta better write yourself a little guide of what you're gonna do, and then, they'll print it on the recording. Now, my brother Crescencio started, I think, in the 70s, improvising more in the boleros. It was a record that came out with I was just right out of high school that we recorded with my brother Pedro's group, Los Galleros. And we did Grande Grande, we did a whole bunch of those boleros there where Chencho just, he's featured on the whole album, and he's just doing a lot of improvisation in the boleros. And he got that from Jackie Kuhn, a Dixieland trumpet player from Disneyland.
Oh my
And
gosh.
Chencho used to have the mariachi at Disneyland in 1974 and 75. That's where I started playing mariachi with him. And this Jackie Kuhn, this older guy that just was an amazing guy, improvisation guy, trumpet, Dixieland music, And Chencho would ask, hey, what do you use as a guide? And all of a sudden I would hear like Sabor a Mi, and him embellishing the introduction sometimes, and I go, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Because nobody ever did that. I mean, Cipriano never did it, Miguel never did it, but Chencho introduced it to mariachi. And then sort of, some trumpet players do that now. It's become sort of part of that.
We'd like to continue on with the final question here, and there's a lot of things that are happening here in education in Texas, and Tame, working with UIL and working with TMEA, there's a lot of future in the mariachi. We've been told once we have enough representation of region areas that one day there may be an all-state mariachi in Texas.
Yes, sir. Let's go there.
We're working on that, and Tame is really the vehicle that they're working with. So as a segue into that, the last question, Maestro, in your career as a professional director and performer, and you've been to many states where they have mariachi education, what do you see in the future for mariachi education, and how do the other states compare to what's happening aquí in Texas?
Well, I think definitely Texas is the front runner in all this. I mean, you guys are an example for pretty much everybody else, to the other southwestern states, and other states back east that want to have these programs. I mean, definitely you guys are in the front of the pack, My biggest worry about all this is that when, the musical style grows and more people come into the picture of doing transcriptions and doing this and doing that sometimes if they're not done correctly, people get misinformation, and then all of a sudden you start losing the essence of the music. And that's sort of my biggest worry, and that's going to be our biggest challenge. The more this music grows, the more, I think, the more commitment we have to have, to preserve the real traditional style, los sones, las polcas, los valses, las canciones rancheras. I don't think there's ever been a place that I do a clinic where somebody asks me, hey, Mr. Hernandez, can you teach us New York, New York? No, okay, we do that for a show, we do Glenn Miller for a show. We do the Devil Went Down to Georgia for a show. We don't teach kids to play that. We teach them to play mariachi. Porque el mariachi es la música vernácula de México, ¿no? La música ranchera. Son los sones, son los jarabes, son las polcas, las rancheras, todos esos estilos, los guapangos, todo eso.
So this is very equivalent to even jazz musicians. Like there's been a lot of cliques I've been over hearing that they have the emphasis on listening to the old school, like Count Basie, very old
Definitely.
school. Why listen to David Sanborn? You have this modern sound and you don't have the foundation where he got that sound.
You have to have a foundation.
And then you could branch out.
Yeah, because I mean, you could start off on something very modern, and then you ask them to play something traditional. You say, okay, that group should just play modern stuff. Don't play mariachi. Because they can make that transition. You have to start with a good foundation of understanding, cómo se tocan las apoyaturas, los mordentes, los grisados, los arcos, just all the true phrasing of mariachi music.
I want to get back on the UIL, what we're looking at and where we're going with this, because it brings your question to me. We're talking about rote teaching. The school districts, they frown about rote teaching. We need to teach the way that we do and the basis of what we are. And we're going into mariachi, trying to get sanctioned by UIL to follow those guidelines. And one of the things it's going to be is going to be a sight reading part that they have there. And so structuring in classrooms and education, where is it that we teach that level of skill by, we're talking about songs and we need to get songs and do this. And I understand it professionally is one thing, but coming into the education world, there's certain things and guidelines that we have to do in education for our district and for our state that it's different than the exact what we're talking about.
I was doing like a vocal class. It's very effective before they actually pick up an instrument, where it's just solfege. They learn how to sight read. They learn a little theory. They learn to get a little bit of confidence with their voice, and by the time they pick up an instrument, they already know those notes. So I think it makes a lot more sense to teach them that way.
There's the same way that we're raising we're raising the standard for the student. We're actually raising the standard for the instructor.
Yes, sir.
That's what's happening. And we're going to have to get our lesson plans. I'll teach a class because I want them to understand the essence of the son jalisciense. I'm not going to take out music for them. I want them to listen to it. I want them to learn it, to play it, and I'm going to teach it to them by rote as much as I can. When they're getting the idea, when they've learned the song all the way through, look, here is the music. This is what you are playing. But the style and the essence is not in this piece of paper. So we're setting the standards, and we'll be able to follow the criteria of what's demanded of us. But we're raising the standard for the mariachi teachers. That's what we're doing.
And if I may, because, I'm very concerned with this in Clark County as a supervisor. For example, listening is one of the content standards. And so listening, you brought up a great point with that. The more we listen to mariachi, the more we understand its essence. And the more our students listen to it, the more they will get out of it and the more they will be led to the traditional sound. But I do understand your question and I understand your concern. I think there's room for both, to be honest with you. I think it's important that there's a listening part of it when you do mariachi in the classroom. And I think that's where you get a lot of
I think actually involving acting, drama,
yes, yeah,
is
for sure.
so important to when you're teaching a song, and they're trying to sell that story to an audience, so they could really know what's going on with that song. I think all that is very, very important.
And I wanted to speak to your issue of UIL, just how we've handled it, and Maestro helped us with this a little bit with our region. So we were here a few years ago, and we heard in our mariachi session that once half the regions were holding region competitions, that TMEA would consider doing an all-state mariachi. So we all looked at each other and said, okay, you do one, you do one, let's bring more. That's right. But it's been a challenge because we want to make it rigorous. We want to make it on par with band and orchestra and choir and the other arts. And so we've done two things. If you don't mind me telling you, Tommy Mao that we've chosen for the state competition is that it follows the marching band model. So the ensemble competes as a performance group, like marching band would, and there's no sight reading involved. So, and there is the UIL model for that. So we've kind of adopted that for the state competition. On the region level, however, we have followed exactly the TMEA guidelines. And every region does what works best for them. In our region, it's Dallas, it's a big region. And Bob Floyd was just here,
I know, I'm sorry, he missed, had to walk out.
He said he had to get to 6 other sessions, but we have support, thanks to Bell and Juan and all the advocacy work that you all have done. We have the support of UIL and TMEA on the conceptual level. Now we have to prove to them that we can make it work in the classroom and make it rigorous, and that we are teaching standards. And so for our region, the way we dealt with that is I had to present the entire Dallas area, which is huge. And they had to vote on whether or not we could even have a Mariachi competition. And then if they decided yes, how would we fit into the existing structure? Because my tag says orchestra director. And I already told you guys I can't even play violin. But the way we've done in Dallas is mariachi is a subdivision of the orchestra section. And so we do individual auditions, and those kids individually compete, and they come together for an all-region competition. So right now it's kind of a mixture. Our all-region is like TMEA all-region. Our UIL, or our state competition that MASPA sponsors, is like marching band. Yeah. And these issues are some things we'll be talking about tomorrow at the common meeting. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a great segue for us.
I had also heard that, yeah, when we get half of the regions for the mariachi, they'll consider an all-state mariachi. We've got 28 regions, we need 14. How many regions have a mariachi, an all-region mariachi?
I think we're at about 8 or 9 right now.
Yeah.
I think. Does anybody know which regions they are?
Yeah, I've got a list actually.
We have the number that's required in order to have the competition. I think it's a little bit more than 8. It's a little bit more, I want to say 10 or 12.
And in our area, it's only the Region 20 that does the audition, but we have schools from 3 other surrounding areas that get waivers to participate. And they get to do that because their region doesn't have a region competition. So even though we're only one region, there are actually 4 regions that participate.
Well,
That's good.
we want to utilize, but any questions directed right now, the MASPA and the TAMET will happen tomorrow at 3:30, so we invite everyone. But any more questions right now for Maestro Hernandez back there?
So going back to the importance of listening, what would you say would be a good list of albums to be able to listen to really be able to hone in on the style and to correctly...
For sones, I'll give you the ones that really influenced me a lot, okay? For sones, there is one de Vargas, donde toca, the songs that are there are El Maracumbé, which is just with one trumpet. Está El Tirador with one trumpet. Está El Becerro with one trumpet. Se me hace que es el que dice el mejor mariachi del mundo. I think it was volume 1. That one. Right? From that, I don't deviate from that a lot. Also, I think they did another one que se llama Sones de Jalisco in the early 60s. Ya donde entró ya Rigoberto Alfaro y El Pato and those guys. There you have 2 trumpets and up to 3 trumpets in some parts. That's another good one. De rancheros, así como corridos y esa onda, el Charro Avitia, donde está el bandolero, está el Dorado de Villa, el Charro Avitia. Charro Avitia. That's an awesome one. And I don't mention a whole bunch of them. I just mention the ones that I know that Miguel Martinez played at his best. Okay? Amalia Mendoza, donde está Gríteme Piedras del Campo, Pobre del Pobre, Échame a mí la culpa. That's another really, really good one, donde toca Miguel Martinez. I don't know if there's other ones. Pa' todo el año con Miguel Aceves Mejía, donde se oye ya las 2 trompetas, ahí está, the song Pa' todo el año. Está, se me hace Renunciación. Está una canción que se llama No seas necia, que es buen título para las mujeres que cantan. Se las recomiendo a todas. Those records are awesome. Now in the 60s, en los valses a mí me gustaba mucho El Poeta y Campesino, obviamente porque ahí tocan mis hermanos, ya se escuchan unas cosas así bonitas, ahí tocan unas canciones ellos. Hay un disco, el disco de Gracias de José Alfredo Jiménez, You know, ahí está mi hermano Chencho ya tocando primer trompeta y en unas partes, en unas también toca Cipriano. El disco de Cantinero de José Alfredo Jiménez, Cipriano y Chencho, yeah, scary good, very good. You know, very, very